Hello everyone, it's Foo here, and today I'm bringing you another Pokemon team for VGC Series 8. It features a really fun restricted Pokemon with an absolutely awesome support Pokemon that I can't believe how great it is. So we're looking at Necrozma Dusk Mane with Riolu, the almighty, all-powerful Riolu. I can't believe how good it is at the moment. I had so much fun using it, so I really can't wait to show you. The team is awesome. It's got a load of unconventional mons, so I thought we'd just jump straight into a battle to show you how this works. So the first team we faced was a Sun team with a Groudon. Groudon seems to be very, very popular at the moment. I saw so many of them on the ladder, and that's a pretty risky matchup for me with the Necrozma team. With the Sun, you've got a lot of fire types, you've also got ground type attacks, and Necrozma does not like them, despite its Prism Armor ability, reducing the damage of super effective moves. That's not great. So on this first turn, I Dynamax my Necrozma because though committing the Dynamax to a Pokemon that doesn't have a great matchup against the opponent's Pokemon may seem risky, there's a very important strategy that I'm trying to pull off. So I go for Max Guard on this first turn, and Riolu has Prankster Copycat that copies the Max Guard, apart from that Max Guard was based off Trick Room, so it actually copies Trick Room. I can set up Trick Room before the opponent even has a chance to stop it. Now, the opponent didn't Dynamax their Charizard, which I kind of thought that they might, but they don't, which is alright. It means that they can't one-hit KO my Riolu with Max Wildfire damage, for example. Now they're going to Dynamax, but they actually Dynamax their Groudon. I kind of run out of time on this move a little bit. I go for a Max Steel Spike, but I wanted to go for a Coaching with my Riolu. I'll show you what that does on the next turn, but this turn instead I Protect, which is kind of okay because it means that if they went for a Heat Wave or something like that with Charizard, I would have been saved from damage, but I definitely thought that they would Dynamax, so if they go for a Max move into Riolu, then obviously it's toast. But it doesn't, so we managed to get a defense boost with my Necrozma before they're able to attack. This is min speed Necrozma, absolutely no speed at all, so in Trick Room it moves really fast. And now the Groudon goes for a super effective Max Quake, but you can see that does very little damage after my defense booster with my Prism Armor ability, which is why I like Necrozma so much. It's so bulky, very good for setting up Trick Room, but at the same time it hits like a truck. So I go for a Coaching now, I get a boost to my attack and a boost to my defense, and I can go for another Max Steel Spike this time into Charizard. Because it didn't Dynamax, I can just take that out at +1 attack. And also, I think that Life Orb is a great item for Necrozma because you have a base of 157 attack stat, which is huge, and the Life Orb gives you a very reliable boost. Weakness Policy is also a very viable option. You can see here that I'm getting pounded with Max Quakes, so I would have got a Weakness Policy off as well. But I do actually quite like Life Orb just for the reliability of that damage output. You don't need to activate the Weakness Policy, and I can give myself Coaching boosts for the stat boosts, so I think that that's the option that I really like. Now we've run out of Dynamax, which sucks a little bit, but we can get another Coaching off onto my my Necrozma here and just go for another attack. This time I'm actually going to attack again into the Groudon because it's threatening me with the most damage. Despite having a ton of defense boosts, it does have a lot of special defense boosts already, and I've got special attackers in the back, so I wanted to make sure that Groudon is taken down while I've still got this powerful physical attacker on the field. Now my opponent goes for a Sleep Powder with their Venusaur, and they do land that Sleep Powder, which sucks a little bit, but Sleep Powder is kind of tricky to play around. I didn't have much counterplay with the Pokemon that I brought this time. I do have things to help against this, but I didn't bring it this time. I go for a Feint on this turn. I know that probably both my Pokemon are going down here, but getting that Feint off with my Riolu might mean that I can break the Venusaur's potential Focus Sash, so I thought that that was a worthwhile attack to go for there. Now both of my Pokemon go down, and we're pretty much neck and neck with the opponent because we've both just got 2 Pokemon left. And yeah, it's getting a bit tight here. Unfortunately, the Trick Room wears off just as I bring in my Milotic and my Torkoal. Torkoal would have really appreciated that Trick Room, but unfortunately it's just worn off. This is a bit of a dicey endgame because Milotic doesn't fare well into either of the opponent's Pokemon, and they're both special attackers, so they can potentially do a lot of damage to Torkoal. So this turn I just go for an Eruption, and I protect my Milotic expecting some super effective hits to go into it. They actually Sleep Powder into my Torkoal and target into my Milotic with a Thunderbolt. That's kind of okay. If they're going to Sleep Powder Torkoal, at least on this turn I get to burn a turn of sleep immediately without risking any damage on any of my other Pokemon. Now this turn, I just tried to get an Ice Beam off. I'm a very offensive Milotic, and I want to get an Ice Beam off into basically either of my opponent's Pokemon. Probably into the Venusaur would have been helpful there though. I do have the Wakamberry, which would have helped me try to survive this Thunderbolt, but they get an unfortunate critical hit. I'm not sure if I would have survived because it is a Life Orb Zapdos, but I do have some special defense investment. But very fortunately, Torkoal wakes up in the nick of time to take out the Venusaur, and now I just have to hope that not only can I live a Life Orb Thunderbolt, which I do, I now have to take out a very healthy Zapdos with a Flamethrower. It's got the Sun Boost and the Charcoal Boost. Can it do it? It can! So that was a very clutch battle. It came very close, but you could see at the beginning there that despite having a really bad matchup against the opponent's team because it's a Sun team, with my restricted being a Steel type, I was able to pull it out. So that's good, and that's definitely necessary because I'm seeing so many Groudons, so this team has to function against Sun teams. So yeah, that was the first one. You really saw how Riolu and the Necrozma can work together pretty well because you can get that Trick Room off pretty safely, and you can start to get coaching boosts with the Necrozma, which boosts not only its defense, which with Prism Armor it makes it incredibly hard to take down, but also it boosts its attack, and with the Life Orb it just becomes an offensive demon. If you're enjoying this video, please consider leaving a like and subscribe for more content. But let's move on to the next match, which demonstrates some different aspects to the team. My opponent's running a Zacian team with the Regigigas Weezing combo and some other threatening Pokemon on there. Also notably, they have an Incineroar, which is pretty scary for Necrozma because of the potential for it to reduce Necrozma's attack. So, my opponent decides to lead with Regieleki and Incineroar. Despite me having a Milotic on the team, I guess they thought that they don't have to worry about intimidating my Pokemon and potentially giving my Milotic a competitive boost if they lead next to Regieleki, which threatens Milotic with super effective damage. I lead with Riolu and Necrozma, which is most of the time the lead I go with, but not all of the time. And on this first turn, I just want to double protect because I want to waste the Incineroar's fake out turn. Now, I'm not too threatened with damage output from these two. It depends if the Regieleki is choice specs, but you can see here that actually they just get a reflect off, which is kind of annoying, but at the same time it means that they probably can't one-hit KO my Necrozma. And on this turn I choose to go for a coaching and try to get a Trick Room off, because the coaching gives me a defense boost. So in case the Incineroar wanted to go for a super effective attack into my Necrozma, I should be able to tank that pretty easily and still get up the Trick Room. They instead go for two switching moves, so they get a lot of momentum on me and again drop my Necrozma's attack. So despite the coaching boost, I'm still at -1 attack, which sucks quite a bit. As the opponent reveals they haven't actually brought their Zacian, which kind of makes sense because Necrozma does beat Zacian pretty hard, but they brought their Regigigas and Weezing, which is kind of worrying for my team. Now, this turn, what I wanted to try to do was to get some damage on the Weezing, because if we can get rid of that, Regigigas isn't threatening at all, and they really don't have much damage output without Regigigas. So what I do is go for a feint with my Riolu, predicting a protect on the Weezing, and I just go for a Sunsteel Strike. I don't have Psychic type attacks on my Necrozma. I actually opt for Earthquake over Psychic Fangs. However, you could replace Earthquake for Psychic Fangs. I think Psychic Fangs is a very reasonable move to have. It helps because with only Steel and Ground, you don't have very good attacks into like Ho-Oh, for example. So having Psychic Fangs to hit Ho-Oh or Charizard or whatever is a reasonable option to take. The opponent just double switched back into their other Pokemon, and now because of all of the attack drops on my Necrozma, I thought that it was probably best just to switch into my Milotic. As I've got the Wakambari, so I'm not too worried about Regieleki here. As my opponent makes a fatal flaw, they were playing way too recklessly with their Incineroar and really weren't respecting Milotic at all. So now what they've done is they've gone for a parting shot into Milotic, which activates its competitive ability twice, meaning that I'm now at +3 special attack. And so they played way too recklessly with their Incineroar. They didn't respect Milotic at all. And I did predict them to make the same moves as turn 1, so they Volt Switch into Riolu, but that's kind of fine. I've broken a potential Sash on the Regieleki with my Feint, which is great. And now I can switch. Now the opponent gets their Regigigas and their Weezing in, but I can bring back in my Necrozma without any attack drops at all, so that's pretty good. Now I'm going to Dynamax, and I'm actually going to Dynamax my Milotic because I have those special attack boosts. I want to be able to live a hit from the Regigigas, and I know that my Necrozma will be doing very good damage just with its Life Orb. So while the Trick Room is still up, I want to get as much damage onto Regigigas as possible. My opponent actually protects their Weezing. I'm not gonna target into Weezing right now. I know that it can potentially protect, and I know that Regigigas, I should be able to get a ton of damage into it with my double target. So we read into that protect really nicely and do a lot of damage to this Regigigas. Don't quite take it out, which is unfortunate, but that's because they do have that Reflect up. So without the Reflect, the Sunsteel Strike would have done even more damage, and we should have been able to take out that Regigigas. But unfortunately, that's not the case. Their Max Strike does a ton of damage to this Dynamaxed Milotic, but we still have one turn of Trick Room left. We're not in a bad position. The Regigigas does have the Life Orb as well. They're actually going to switch out their Weezing. I was targeting into the Weezing with my Milotic here, and I was just targeting into the Regigigas with my Necrozma, because if I can get that KO, that would be fantastic. But they do max guard here, so they made quite a good play because they're sacking their Regieleki, but it means that the next turn they can bring back in their Weezing, they can protect again if they want, but the Trick Room will have worn off then. So that was quite good positioning from them, despite sacking Regieleki, which could have been good for their damage output. It means that they keep their Regigigas as a huge threat. So now what we can do is max guard with Milotic, predicting a strong attack into that with Regigigas, as I can just Sunsteel Strike into the Regigigas. I was predicting the taunt with the Weezing because I know that they can't let me get another Trick Room off. But if they do that, it means I can get rid of the Regigigas, and now without Regieleki and Regigigas, they don't have much damage output. They've only got the Incineroar and the Weezing. My Dynamax will wear off, and so Milotic won't have much health left, but it's got a pretty good matchup against these remaining Pokemon. I don't want my Milotic to get like faked out and taken out by the Weezing this turn, so I'm considering just switching my Milotic out into my Torkoal in the back. So Torkoal, it is it's coming in here. It's not looking too great because it doesn't get its sun up because of the neutralizing gas, but fortunately I do have the Earth Power on it as well, which hits both of these Pokemon for super effective damage, so that's not too bad. And now I just go for a Sunsteel Strike into the Weezing because I need to get some good damage on that, and it does do really good damage. It does half of its health despite the Intimidate. So yeah, that was really, really good damage. Now I can just protect with Torkoal, and I can go for the move that I haven't revealed yet with my Solgaleo, so I can go for an Earthquake. The Flare Blitz was targeted into Torkoal, interestingly. I'm not quite sure why that happened, but in the rain they wouldn't have been able to take out Solgaleo through Prism Armor anyway, so I guess that's a reasonable play. And I almost take out the Incineroar. I do take out the Weezing. After the Destiny Bond, very interesting attack. They're able to take down my Solgaleo, but I'm not too worried about that because I've still got two Pokemon that can take the Incineroar out from this range of health. So I liked this battle because it showed you at the beginning that you can use the coaching to go to set Trick Room manually with Necrozma. You don't have to rely on that max guard copycat play. You can actually just coaching, get a defense boost, and with Prism Armor, that means you can probably set up Trick Room in the face of almost anything. Definitely any physical attacker. Maybe some special attackers would prevent you from setting up Trick Room that way. But why I like Riolu next to Necrozma is just that it does allow you to get that Trick Room up relatively easily, while retaining very high damage output for Necrozma and not worrying too much about intimidates and such, because you can always boost that attack up again. I also thought this battle was important to show that Milotic is very important, because Incineroar isn't a great matchup for Necrozma, and you can obviously punish their Incineroars with Milotic pretty hard. So that was a pretty cool battle there. Now let's move on to some of the more unconventional sets on this team. And my opponent's rocking a Zygarde team, which you don't see too much. I really like this build with the Comfey and the Rillaboom and the Zygarde. I was actually really worried about their Celesteela too, but let's see what they lead. So my opponent sends out their Comfey and Zygarde, which is kind of what I thought they would. That's like the obvious, like their restricted Pokemon Zygarde is probably going to come. As I lead with Riolu and Grimmsnarl, and this is so fun. So Grimmsnarl is very specifically on this team to take on some certain specific restricted Pokemon that I would otherwise struggle with. It's actually a max attack offensive Grimmsnarl, and so this first turn my opponent does not see it coming at all. They tried to Draining Kiss and take out my Riolu turn 1, but because of Prankster, I'm able to get a coaching off straight away to boost my Grimmsnarl's attack right away. I'm Dynamax, and I can go, oh, well, I can obviously take the 1,000 arrows super well after the coaching. I go straight for a Max Starfall into their Zygarde. There's no way that they're living this, unless they have the Roselli Berry, which they don't. They are going to drop. So my opponent definitely didn't see that play coming. They probably thought I was going to fake out or reflect, because Grimmsnarl is almost always a more like support Pokemon, but on this team it's offensive and it's just for this purpose. Obviously Zygarde isn't a great matchup for Necrozma with the 1,000 arrow attack. Specifically Grimmsnarl is really helpful for Moltres and Yveltal, because they're the worst matchups for Necrozma, so it really can take them on very well, as well as stuff like Giratina, a lot of the dragon types that are running around, and it becomes really powerful after a coaching boost. It becomes quite bulky as well, so I really like that. Now the opponents brought in their Rillaboom. Last turn I set up the Misty Terrain with my Max Starfall. Interestingly, they get rid of that, obviously, and it means that my Max Snooze could then potentially put them to sleep, but my opponents just Dynamax their Comfey. I've not seen that before at all. Presumably it's because they really came very unprepared for the Grimmsnarl. I was worried about Celesteela maybe coming in next, which is why I brought in my Torkoal, but Torkoal has a fantastic matchup against their team. Now that Zygarde's gone, they really don't have very much for it at all, and you can see here, I just go for an Eruption, they fake out me, so that doesn't work, but I get a +1 Gmax Snooze off into that Rillaboom, and it does so much damage. Now without the threat of fake out, I can freely go for an Eruption, and I'm going to go for another Gmax Snooze into that Rillaboom slot because I'm worried about the Celesteela coming in. While Comfey's still spamming those Max Starfalls, they're not doing enough damage, and I can go for the Max Snooze into the Urshifu. It does a decent amount considering that it's 4 times resisted, as I get the Eruption off, and that takes out the Urshifu because they weren't prioritizing attacking into the Torkoal. I think maybe it would have been better for them to get a bit of damage off into Torkoal and then maybe attack my Grimmsnarl once Dynamax has worn off and I'm not so bulky. But anyway, they bring back in their Rillaboom right here, and I mean Torkoal's looking so good right now. They don't have much offense into that at all. And right now, actually, I think there's still some value to my Grimmsnarl. I do have Fake Out on the set. I do have Sucker Punch on the set. So if I can avoid the Rillaboom's Grassy Glide or Fake Out this turn, then I think it could be useful later on. So I actually switch in my Necrozma. It doesn't really fear anything from either of these Pokemon. And I'm just going to protect on the Fake Out turn with my Torkoal, as the Comfey's still going for Max Starfalls. It's not going to do very much at all to Necrozma, and so we're in a pretty commanding position here. The opponent really did not expect that Grimmsnarl at all, and that's why we use it. So Riolu giving that Grimmsnarl just +1 attack, +1 defense, it becomes a monster, and yeah, it's really, really fun. The opponent tries to floral healing into their Rillaboom, but because they've changed the terrain, that's not going to help them too much. They can only brick break into my Necrozma, which does no damage. And they do have a Berry on their Comfey, but this is a Life Orb, max attack, Brave Necrozma. It's just going to decimate their Comfey even through the Berry. And I'm left with the Torkoal, and obviously Torkoal is going to burn this Rillaboom to a crisp. So yeah, that's the end of that battle. I wanted to show you the Grimmsnarl because there is a very specific reason why it's there. It's not, I don't actually bring it too frequently. It's very much matchup based, but if you do see a Moltres or an Yveltal, it's worth considering the Grimmsnarl because it's got a very good matchup against those Pokemon. The next battle I want to show you is against a Kyogre team. I thought it was important to show you this because they're very common and very strong teams and can be quite hard to deal with. So let's get straight into this one to show you how this team can take them on. So my opponent's going to lead with Tornadus and Rillaboom, which I think is a great lead because they obviously saw on my team I have a Rillaboom, and that's probably going to be my best way to take on Kyogre. So that's what I led. I thought if I could get a Coaching and a Grassy Glide off, that would be a pretty strong commanding beginning to the battle. But yeah, they see straight through that, so I want to switch out because I can't let it take an Air Slash, for example, from the Tornadus. So on this first turn, I'm just going to protect with Riolu to waste any Fake Out that they might be going for. And I'm expecting like an Air Slash into either of my Pokemon, to be honest, but that doesn't happen. They actually tried to taunt my Riolu. So on this turn, what I'm going to do is go for a Coaching into my into my Necrozma, not Solgaleo. And I'll try to get off a Trick Room because I think my opponent might struggle to know which Pokemon to taunt. Should they taunt my Riolu? Because I wouldn't mind not getting the Coaching off. But if I chose to do the Max Guard copycat play, I would be able to get the Trick Room off. But actually they do taunt into the Solgaleo. I didn't want to Dynamax my Solgaleo either. It's not got a great matchup as the Dynamax Pokemon in this game. So I decided to actually switch out here because then the Arcanine's come out. I've got a -1 attack and it's just not a great matchup. So I decided to switch into Milotic here. As the taunt comes out again, they're trying to prevent the Riolu from doing anything. They do get the burn off into the Milotic. It's not the worst thing. Milotic doesn't worry about burns too much. I mean, I've got Recover on this set. Grassy Terrain is up, which is going to help mitigate the burn damage. So it's not the end of the world. I do like Milotic in the rain matchups for sponging hits, but it's only got water and ice type attacks, so it really can't do much damage into the Kyogres. So you need to make sure that you've got damage into Kyogre. So right here, they do go for an Air Slash into the Riolu. It does a ton of damage, takes me down to my Focus Sash, but I am able to get an Ice Beam off into the Tornadus. I went for the feint because I was predicting the taunt, but also I was like, maybe I can break their Focus Sash and then do a ton of damage to the Ice Beam, being a very powerful Milotic, but it doesn't take it down, unfortunately. It does survive. I do a good amount of damage though. This turn though, the opponent switches into their Kyogre, as I'm going for Muddy Water here because I want to get some really good damage onto that Arcanine. I want to do like a ton of damage to it. I'm actually going to switch my Riolu out into my Necrozma. I'm not expecting them to go for like a Flare Blitz or anything into that slot or burn it. I just don't think that that's what they would go for. As they go for a Snarl, and that's really great for me because it gives me a competitive boost on my Milotic. It gives me +1 special attack. They've also set up the Rain. I'm not sure what was going through their mind when they made that move, but it just means that my Muddy Water here is going to do a ton of damage to Arcanine. And I do actually do a really nice amount of damage to Kyogre too. That damage could be very useful on Kyogre, but I take down the Arcanine, and that was a nice turn. That was a pretty good turn. In terms of positioning, I've now got a non-taunted Necrozma on the field, so I can try to go for that Trick Room again if I want to. And I've got the Milotic, which can take some hits, and it's at +1 special attack in the rain, which isn't awful for Milotic. Now they're going to bring out their Rillaboom. That again threatens my Milotic, which isn't fantastic. They've also got Fake Out pressure, so it's not great in terms of that. They've kind of shifted the momentum again this turn. I'm going to go for a Protect with my Necrozma as the Fake Out comes out, and they do target into Necrozma, because I'm thinking they know that my Necrozma has Trick Room now, so they'll probably try to prevent the Trick Room. That's fine. It means that my Milotic, even in the face of a Rillaboom, it was a bit brazen, but I am able to get an attack off here. I'm going to go for a +1 special attack, Ice Beam into that Rillaboom, and I do a really good amount of damage, taking it down to red HP. So that was a very nice prediction on that turn, despite not being a great turn for momentum. It did allow me to get that really nice big hit off onto Rillaboom. Now this next turn, I'm going to be really cheeky. I'm going to try to get a Trick Room off, because if the Kyogre goes for a Water Spout, I'm pretty sure I can survive that with my Necrozma. It's a very bulky, it's max HP. But instead, the Kyogre is going to Dynamax here, which is a really good play because their Max Geyser is going to hurt. So I'm going to Protect with Milotic to try and avoid the Grassy Glide, and that is actually what comes out and what happens. So we're predicting the Rillaboom quite nicely here, but unfortunately we didn't predict this Max Geyser. It's going to do a lot of damage, but I'm really hoping I can survive and set up the Trick Room. That's not the case. It is a critical hit, and I could try to pretend that that mattered, but if that thing is holding the Mystic Water, that didn't matter at all. My Necrozma was a goner. So that was an unfortunate turn. I'm not too upset though, because to deny my Trick Room, the opponent has had to commit their Dynamax to their Kyogre, and they've already seen that I have a Rillaboom in the back. And obviously that threatens their Kyogre enormously. So that's pretty good right here, because I can just Dynamax my Rillaboom and go from there. I'm going to switch into my Riolu because I need my Milotic later in the game. They've still got their Tornadus, so Milotic is definitely more useful against Tornadus than the Riolu will be. And if they don't take it out this turn, I do have the potential to coaching my Rillaboom on the next turn. But they do go for the Grassy Glide into that Riolu slot, and it goes down, which is kind of okay. It was sort of fodder at this stage. The Max Hailstorm comes out. We're a relatively bulky Rillaboom. We've got max HP, but it does do over half. But it should be okay because we're just going to go straight for a G-Max Drum Solo into that Kyogre. The grassy terrain is up, and they've taken some damage already, so that is definitely going to KO that Kyogre, which is fantastic. That's obviously the biggest threat to my team, and it's also something that Milotic can't damage at all, so we needed to get rid of that as soon as possible. Now we've got 2 turns of Rillaboom Dynamax left, and they've got their Rillaboom and their Tornadus. It's slightly hairy though, because their Tornadus is super effective against my Rillaboom, and their Rillaboom is super effective against my Milotic. So we need to make sure that we play this endgame right. And the way to do that is to Protect with the Milotic, because it might be faked out, it might be Grassy Glided, so we need to Protect from that. The opponent doesn't predict that. They go for an Air Slash into my Rillaboom. I am able to survive. If that was Hurricane, I would not have survived that hit. And we go for the G-Max Drum Solo into the Rillaboom. We are able to take it out because the grassy terrain is still around, and that is really fantastic. If they had predicted the Milotic Protect and doubled into my Rillaboom that turn, then I would have lost. Probably. But they didn't. They really were worried about the Milotic threat, which is fair because they've seen how much damage it's been doing into their Pokemon, and we get the prediction right. And now it comes down to whether we can survive and not flinch to an Air Slash, which is another reason why I think their last turn play made sense, because even if it played out like it did, they have a chance to flinch this turn. They don't get it though, and so we're able to take out their Tornadus. That was a very close match. But I think I showed you kind of how you can play into these Kyogre teams. You can force them to try to have to Dynamax their Kyogre to prevent your Trick Room, which is pretty good because then you can kind of checkmate them with the G-Max Rillaboom. And if you can get some coaching boosts onto that Rillaboom, then that will be really, really good too, because Rillaboom is a terror with some boosts from coaching. So I thought that was an important one to show you just because Kyogre teams are very, very common. Now I've got one more battle to show you because so far we've Dynamaxed Necrozma, Milotic, Grimmsnarl, Rillaboom, and there's one more little guy that we can Dynamax on this team, and I have to show you how that works, especially with the Riolu synergy. So let's get into this last one. My opponent has another Groudon team. They're going to lead with Umbreon and Porygon, which is a relatively passive lead. They're both support Pokemon, but they do have the potential to deal some damage to my Pokemon. So you can see that Porygon actually gets the special attack boost, and the Umbreon has Foul Play, which does threaten my Necrozma quite a bit. So on this first turn, I'm just going to go for a Protect and a Coaching. Coaching goes through Protect, so that's something else that I just wanted to show you, that you can go for a Protect and Coaching on that first turn. And unfortunately, the Umbreon goes for a Yawn into my Riolu. I was really predicting a Foul Play or Yawn into my Solgaleo in case I Dynamax. But they get the Trick Room up, which is really good because I'm a Trick Room team. So I don't know why. I don't know whether they just didn't factor that in, but yeah, this turn I'm now free to just go for some attacks because they've set the Trick Room up for me, and I've got a Coaching boost already, so we can see the power of the Necrozma. If they had yawned into Necrozma last turn while I protected, I would have got another Coaching off, which would have been so good because this Sunsteel Strike into Umbreon would have KO'd, but fortunately not. They targeted Riolu, which was very good on their part. You can see here that they go for Foul Play. I have boosted my attack, but with Coaching boosted your defense as well, so it didn't make that Foul Play any more powerful. It just was going to do that much regardless, and that's a lot of damage. This next turn, my opponent makes a really questionable play. They Eerie Impulse into Milotic. Maybe they just haven't seen many Milotics yet. I think it's actually a really good Pokemon, especially on teams weak to Incineroar, which this one kind of is, apart from I put a Milotic on it, so it's not weak to Incineroar anymore. But yeah, because of competitive, Eerie Impulse is completely negated. Now, this next turn, I go for a Sunsteel Strike. I could opt to try to take out the Umbreon, considering that it's able to heal with Morning Sun, but I actually just want to get a big hit off into the Porygon, and I kind of forced them to either take out my Necrozma this turn with the Umbreon or heal. Now I can get the Muddy Water off. I do miss the Porygon too. I mean, it goes with the territory with Muddy Water, but I hit the Umbreon, which is the most important thing, and we can take that out, which is really good. So I've traded my Necrozma for their Umbreon, and Trick Room is up. It's not great, but it's not awful. They've still got their Restricted, which is another Groudon, just to let you know. I bring in my Riolu because I'm thinking if Groudon comes out, I can give my Milotic some defense boosts and maybe Dynamax it and go from there. They actually bring out their Kartana, which is fine. This is also a good situation. I don't mind having brought Riolu out here because I can actually go for a Coaching on this turn. What this does is it means that any attack that the Kartana might want to go for into my Torkoal will be negated. And I felt like Porygon would be attacking into Riolu because it can't really do much into my Milotic anyway. But yeah, if they've got Groudon in the back with a defense boost, Torkoal should be able to take some ground type hits. So that's what I was hoping for. Trick Room is still up, Torkoal is here, max HP, and against the Kartana, this is looking like not awful positioning. Their Groudon is going to be very scary in the back, but they're switching straight into it on an Eruption turn. So I mean, I'm gonna take that. That's really good. I'm gonna get a huge amount of damage. I'm also gonna take out Porygon. And yeah, that was really, really nice. Thank you, Torkoal, and thank you, Porygon, for setting up Trick Room for me turn one. The Groudon unfortunately has Citrus Berry, and because of this kind of non-synergy between my Torkoal and my Milotic, unfortunately Muddy Water isn't going to take out Groudon because the sun is up. If I'd gone for an Ice Beam there, what I wanted to do was just cover for the Kartana maybe having Focus Sash. So, but if I could have gone for an Ice Beam there, and that would have taken down the Groudon, so that maybe would have been the better play. I was slightly concerned that Porygon might have survived the Eruption though, so I kind of still stand by my attack. This turn though, I Dynamax my my Torkoal. Now that Trick Room is worn off, I am going to have to take some hits. The opponent doesn't Dynamax anything, presumably because they want to go for some Precipice Blades before Dynamaxing their Groudon, maybe? But Groudon's already taken way too much HP, so I'm not really sure what they were going for there. They could have Dynamaxed their Kartana. In the end, it really doesn't matter, because you see Precipice Blades does nothing to Dynamax Torkoal with a +1 defense boost from Coaching. And I can take out their Kartana, and there's no way for them to win at this point, because Torkoal is just a beast. Yeah, if they Dynamax Kartana at the end there and maybe gone for a max overgrowth into Milotic, I don't think it would have changed much because I'm pretty sure Milotic still survives. I can still take a Precipice Blades next time. And if they go from Max Quake into Torkoal, for example, I can take them out with the Milotic's Ice Beam. So that was a bit of a checkmate position there. So yeah, I liked this because in this video, I'm able to show you how the Riolu works so well with Necrozma. There's a ton of synergy there. It really helps get the Trick Room up, but also helps Necrozma reach insane levels of bulk and power. And on top of that, there's a lot of synergy with Milotic versus the Incineroar teams, Rillaboom versus the Kyogre teams, Torkoal just being an awesome Trick Room sweeper, and then Grimmsnarl one-hit KOing Zygardes, which is very funny, and also Evil Tiles and also Moltres, which you do see. So yeah, it's a really fun team, but you can definitely play around with the moves on the Grimmsnarl. I also kept it Prankster because though it's not so useful, I've only got Taunt that actually benefits. If you run Frisk, the opponent will know immediately that you are an offensive Grimmsnarl, and part of the point of this set is that it's a surprise set. So you don't want to run Frisk if you want to keep that element of surprise. But that is the team. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, subscribe, and maybe check out my Twitter for more interaction. But that's all from me. I've been Foo, you've been awesome, and hopefully see you next time. Goodbye.